alone reveal the glory of the living God. Spirit of the sovereign Lord.
Welcome to Testimonies of God. Thank you for joining us. My name is Laura Zavisky, and this is my co-host, Kim Thomas. We have a wonderful guest with us today, and her name is Anneke Burke Koister. And she's got a wonderful testimony that's going to move your heart. And if you have any friends or neighbors that you can get a hold of to watch this, they'll enjoy it. And I'm thankful for you coming. Thank you for coming with us.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank
Wow.
you. What a blessing, and I see it as a great honor.
Praise God. Thank you so much, Anneke, for coming. However, before you start sharing your testimony, part of your testimony is your life, before you come into the saving knowledge of receiving Yeshua as your Messiah.
Yes, yes. One of the reasons I actually ended up in America is that because of my parents, during the war, they decided that they would take in Jewish people. And in 1942, my mother was only 27, had 3 daughters of her own. And the first person who actually came to our house was a gentleman from Amsterdam. He was in his mid-60s, and his wife no longer was alive. And then slowly more people started to come. In fact, maybe like 6 months later, my father, because he was also working with the underground, he was asked to go to the railroad station, and he was looking just for one Jewish gentleman, but plans had changed, but he did not know that when he arrived there. And when he arrived, there were actually 3 people waiting for him. A mother, Mr. and Mrs. Hans, with their 22-year-old daughter. My father could not say to them, I only want one person. Right. So they came to our house, and they stayed like over 2 years.
Wow.
Yes. And then again, maybe 6 months again passed, and again my father was asked by the underground to go back to the railroad station. And this time he knew he was looking for a mother and her 16-year-old daughter. And their names are Mrs. Pereira Cohen, and the daughter's name is Alice. And she's actually the only one still surviving today out of the 8, and she lives in Jerusalem.
Oh, how fascinating.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, while they were with us, my parents realized that the mom and the daughter became very, very lonesome for the father and the brother. So they ended up actually, my father went to their hiding place without saying anything to them, and brought them also to our house. And as you realize, that makes 8 people.
Where did you put them in?
Yeah, they actually, we used to have we had a small dining room. And once the Jewish people came, then that became their hiding place, or the place they were staying all during the day. But my father told us, he had to lie to us, because he said, don't you ever dare enter that room, because that has become my work room. And if you ever try to go into the room, you will be spanked in such a way that you'll never forget it. But that door was like locked at all times.
Really? So there was a door in between your dining room and your living room?
Actually, no.
That cuts off the...
It was actually just a small dining room, next to our kitchen.
Okay, okay. Wow, that's awesome.
That is something, yes.
So was the kids about your age?
My sister was actually 7 and a half. I was not quite, my younger sister was just almost like a baby. She was just 2 when the first person came to the house. And then I was at that time almost 4.
Wow.
Okay.
So you remember some stuff?
I don't.
Not at all?
No, the reason I do not remember it all is because we were never told. We never knew for the 3 years that there were extra people living in our home.
Oh, they must have been really quiet.
Not always, because at times we would hear things and we would see things, and then my mom would have to say, no, Anneke, you did not see that. No, Anneke, you did not hear that.
Wow.
So that was very difficult, that they had to,
Yeah.
in a way, constantly lie to us to protect all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That was for your protection, too, yeah.
Yes.
And how long did they stay with you?
The first person, he was there actually for 3 years.
Wow. And the rest, the total you said was about 8 of them?
Altogether 8, yes. And sometimes there were actually more people who came on a temporary basis until another home opened up for them.
Wow. Did you have any trouble getting food for everybody?
Yes, in a way we did, but through the underground, my father was able to receive rationing coupons. And with that, he could not go to our grocery store because they knew there was just a mother and a father and their 3 daughters.
Oh.
So he would have to travel all over the city to buy small amounts in order not to draw suspicion.
Wow.
Wow. How long ago did your dad pass?
My father died in the year 1985 at the age of 76.
Wow. Where did he live at that time?
In the same house where all that
And you
happened.
lived there too? At the same? Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Do you have pictures of in the house?
Yes, I was able to.
Oh, it'll be on the website then. Oh, I'm
Yes.
so excited.
It'll be online.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are even going to be pictures of the hiding place.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because what my parents realized was that it was not enough to have the Jewish people in our home, that we needed to consider that maybe one day, maybe a German soldier would come to search the house. So they were able to, we had a long L-shaped hallway, and my father, with the use of a saw, was able to make an opening into the floorboard right next to the door, the little dining room where they were staying during the day, and next to the stairwell. And then the other opening was actually right as you entered the house. And once they did that, with the help of the Jewish men who were staying with us, my dad would take pailfuls of the sand that was underneath the floorboards, underneath that long L-shaped hallway. And but we were very blessed in many ways. But only 2 blocks away from my house there was a canal. So my dad, because he was the only one allowed to leave the house, so at night, but this was always done at night, of course. And then my dad would take the pails and dump that sand into the canal.
wow.
Wow.
I want to ask you something. Was your dad a real born-again Christian? Was he real strong in his faith? Like,
That's the only reason they did it.
That is
You know, they
yeah.
knew that somehow
That's
the
what I thought.
Lord, first of all, they wanted to help the Jewish people because of the tragedy that was happening to the Jewish people. But the fact that they loved Jesus so much, they loved the Jewish people so much, that was the only thing they could
and
do.
I bet they showed it back to them, the love.
They did.
Oh,
They
that's
really-
so
Wow.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's
I wish they
awesome.
make a movie about your story.
Oh, you know, several people have actually said that.
Yeah, it's
That's-
not when you get
Wow.
I hope so.
You just never don't know if
Yeah,
that's
very
someday.
nice.
Yes, yes.
Wow. And share with us too how you were saying with me on the telephone how your parents was acknowledged in the Holocaust Museum as
Yes.
they was honored, should I say?
Wow.
Yes, my parents do have a tree on the Avenue of the Righteous in Jerusalem at Yad Vashem.
Oh, yes.
And part of that is that you receive a beautiful medal. And on the outside, on the rim, is written in French, "He who saves one life saves the whole world."
Yes.
It's very
That's
beautiful. It's
yes.
very, very
Wow.
beautiful.
How old was your mother when she passed, or is she still living?
No, my mom died in the year 2000 and she was almost 85.
Okay, wow,
But,
that's
um,
awesome.
Yes.
Wow.
That is so good.
So when the kids had grown up, had they kept in contact with your parents and, you know, letting them know, like, you know, what they was doing now, you know, before your parents passed away?
We grew up right away, you know, being in very close touch with them, because
Okay.
the first time when my sisters and I were allowed to see the Jewish people was the day that the war was over, and that was like at night. They knew the war is over, so my mom actually brought us from our bedroom.
Oh, and what happened? I want to hear this.
Yes, thank you. I remember my mom said I was in so deep a sleep I didn't want to get up.
How old were you then?
6.5.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's exciting.
And but when we walked into the front room, it was like there was this crowd, 8 extra people, 8 strangers to a small child. It's like
Yeah.
you see this, but I remember everyone was hugging each other and everyone was crying.
Oh.
It was amazing. But the sad part was that my dad was not able to be part of that because he was still with the underground.
Oh.
Yes. And you earlier saw the picture with all the Jewish people. And the next day, my father actually decided that he would go to an official photographer and asked him, and he also lived only like 2 blocks from my house. He asked him, would you come at 1 o'clock to my house because I have a little surprise. And the 8 Jewish people were the surprise.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yes. But what was amazing, the very first time when the Jewish people were allowed to leave the house, they actually went like from the backyard, and our house was just a regular house.
Was it in the city?
Yes, like townhouses.
Oh, yeah.
The next door neighbor's wall was like also our wall,
Oh, yeah.
but the houses behind us were like 2 stories. And my mom said when the Jewish people came out of our back door, it was almost like people knew something, and doors started to open up on the balconies, and people were looking on what was happening there. But the shocking part was that they could not walk like you and I, the baby can walk. They had not been used to fresh air.
Wow.
They were like stumbling.
Oh,
They were like
wow.
They've been in
falling.
their house in fear for so long.
They
No,
could never
because they
leave the
have not
house.
utilized their muscles in their legs, and they stayed in this little cubic area.
But it was more the fresh air.
Oh,
They had not
yeah,
been
they had all
outside, some for
stuffy
2.5
air.
years.
Wow.
For
Stay
3
there.
years.
3
The one
years?
gentleman for 3 years not being able to be out in the fresh air. Yes.
Wow. And so when they hit the fresh air, it caused them to start falling and
It was like they had to hang on to the walls or to, yes.
wow.
Wow. isn't
That's
that
the first
something?
time I ever heard something like that,
I
that fresh
know
air
it
could,
must be
Yes.
true.
you know,
It is
affect a
true, I
person
know.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes, it
You
was,
know,
it was really
Your mother
amazing.
must have been so nervous during those years that
She wasn't.
she had the Lord and she was at peace, right?
She
oh
was
my gosh.
not. It was so amazing.
That's what I want, that peace that
It was
passes all
so
understanding.
amazing. Also that you asked that, because I had the opportunity to speak at one time with the governor of New Jersey, and they had asked me to stay on that week because there was also, they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of Israel
Oh,
in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And there was like a big parade, and it was just an amazing, amazing experience. And like that whole week, it was just, I spoke 3 times, and then with the governor, it was just such a high point.
Wow.
Felt-
And he wanted you to share that as well?
It was a woman, Christina Wittman was,
Yes,
was the governor,
yes.
yes. And it was really, that whole week, I just felt so blessed. But they even wanted me to stay on through Sunday, because they said our mayor of the city is Jewish, and there's going to be a parade,
Oh, wow.
and the mayor and I were allowed to carry the Israeli flag.
Praise God.
It
Wow.
was so amazing. It
Wow.
was so very, very humbling to, it's just
Beautiful.
so precious. And what I said at the time was that this was the next best thing to being in Israel. There they were celebrating it
yeah,
all
I've
through the
never been
country.
there. I want to go.
It's beautiful.
Oh,
You'll
I
just
bet,
love
yeah.
it.
Wow.
Since I lived myself 4 years in Israel,
Wow.
but then when I was flying home, I was in a high, and I felt like I don't need an airplane to fly home.
Yeah.
And but then I decided, because my mom would always call me on Sundays, like at 9 o'clock my time, and I said, I must ask my mother if she was ever afraid during those years when the Jewish people were in our home. And when I asked her, I started to cry when her answer came. She said, never, Anneke.
Oh, my
But I may not boast
Yeah.
about this, because I could draw from the Lord's strength. And I knew deep in my heart that once I would show fear, that I could not do it. But my father was afraid, and the fact that he was part of the underground and also trying to hide Jewish
and he had
people.
his wife and family there. That
That-
makes
yes.
a big difference.
And there were, a small percentage were part of the underground, and a very small percentage were part of doing the hiding. But to do both was even a smaller percentage.
Did the Jewish people try to keep their holy, holidays and
They
stuff?
could not.
They could not. I know. I just in that other,
There was no, all the
I
laws
just thought
fall
they might
away
have
because
made
they
up
could
little
not.
other ways or something.
They could not keep kosher, of course. There was no kashrut
Right.
possible in Jews. You were glad you had something to
something
eat.
to eat. Exactly.
It was really, yes.
Wow, that's awesome.
But I think and I might have shared that possibly with you over the phone, because I've spoken like over 2,000 times so far, and this is over 40 years, but that here's my mom, she's 27 years old, has 3 young daughters of her own.
Wow.
My mom did not even know whether she had food to give to her own 3 young daughters, and had such faith in the Lord that they would take in 8 strangers.
Wow.
Because people were truly starving.
Oh,
They
yes.
died. Sometimes people would start out walking, hoping they could make it to a farm. They would die in the street. They had been weakened so severely, they never made it to a farm.
Wow.
Did they? Were they open to anything about the Lord, or you kept it separate, or your mother kept it? Your mother and father kept it separate, or?
They would not have kept it separate, but what my father did do, he always read from the Psalms of David,
Oh,
to
yes.
Dan and the 2 young people, the teenagers, because Bob was only like 14 when he came with his dad, and then the mother already was there with Alice. She was like 16.
Oh.
But the 2, because of my father, they went to Israel in 1946 because they became Zionists in my house.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
Wow,
That's amazing.
that is
That is-
amazing.
yes.
Wow, and even so, the Lord, that has to be the Lord, that He will supernaturally make provisions for your mother and your father to have a heart for 8 strangers. And we today find it hard to open up our door to our next door neighbor, less known, 8 strangers,
How true.
and trusted the Lord to provide food for our own, but yet 8 strangers.
Yes.
But then, in His way of the Lord, He knew your dad ministered out of the book of Psalms, and they become hungry and become. Wow,
And
only the
Jesus-
Lord.
Yeah, and Jesus read Psalms daily in the temple. You know what I mean? That's
Yes,
good, you know?
yes,
Yeah.
But what is amazing, I don't think I shared that much with you because we had only so much time, but my father grew up being a very, very rebellious child. He was not afraid of anything or anyone. And my grandfather used to say to him, Wopke, someday you'll end up in a juvenile home.
What was your dad's name?
Wopke. Wopke is the real name, but he would always go by Wop once he grew up.
Oh, okay.
And my
Was
mother.
it like Bob or William or something, and then they call him Bob? No, it meant something different?
Wopke because I'm part Frisian, and that's a Frisian name.
Oh, well, that's exciting, yeah.
And
So your dad, he thought he was going to end up in juvenile?
no, my grandfather.
I mean, your grandfather
he
told
would,
him.
Yes,
yeah.
accuse him. He said, someday you will end up in a juvenile home. And when I share the story, when I speak to a group, that's how I actually start out, by trying to a little bit compare what did they have in common, what gave them both the courage to stand up to someone as evil as Hitler.
Right.
But they both had lost, because my mother was just 1.5 years old when her mother died, and she had 3 siblings. And then my father, he was almost like 10 when his mother died.
Oh.
And I think it left him feeling very angry when his father remarried. He said, the first time I saw my stepmother in the chair, but that was my mother's, I wanted to take a knife and kill her.
Wow.
He was very,
Yeah.
very,
Well, he was very protective of his mother.
yes, he was.
know,
He
which is-
loved her very much.
Yeah, he loved her, that's for sure.
But coming back for a second to, how I like to share that about this rebellion, but how God could take this child, who had a wonderful, precious, generous heart and a love of God, and allow that rebellion to be used for good.
That's right. You take
That's-
every evil thing and
Now,
turn
isn't
around
that-
for good.
Wow.
Isn't
That's
that
right.
I just
Yeah.
love
Wow.
to share that, because what I say, you know, this is what my parents had in common. They both were raised in a very devout Protestant Christian home, and then to lose their moms at such a young age, they had that in common. But then I continue by saying, but what my mom did not have in common with my dad, that he grew up so rebellious. That's why I wanted that picture. I don't know if you saw the
Yes,
picture.
I loved it.
Yes,
He's
yes.
very
My
nice
dad.
looking.
Yes, that you see that, you know, like in a way you can see
I
it.
think you take after him too.
It's interesting you would say that, because when you look at me, and you know, I'm the same height. When you look at my hands, it's like a
same.
feminine copy. You look at my feet, actually, and we were born like 6 days apart.
Oh, really?
When's your birthday? I'm
The,
just
the
curious.
3rd of September, and his was the 9th.
Oh,
But I
okay.
think that, you know, he could see a lot of what's
Himself and you.
Yeah,
What about your
yeah.
two sisters? Were they more both, a little of this or a little of that?
maybe not quite so obvious.
Strong in the dad.
But also, you know, they in their own way, they were also
Yeah.
are also strong. Yes.
Are your
yes.
sisters alive?
My oldest sister, unfortunately died at the age of 50.
Wow. What did she
She
die
was
from?
very sick. She had actually benign tumors on her spine, and when the doctor did the surgery, she was told, "Oh, you'll be jumping over this table." But it left her paralyzed from the waist down, and then one time they forgot to put up the rail, and she fell out of bed and was paralyzed from the neck down.
Oh,
Wow.
So God had mercy on her and took her home.
She actually asked for that there no longer be food to be brought in, and they kept her comfortable. And after a week, she passed away. After a week,
Wow. And how old was she?
50.
Wow.
And you know she's with the Lord.
She is.
And your mom and dad.
Now, did they grow up sharing the testimonies of your parents, you know, opening up the home to the Jewish people as well?
Yes, my sister actually also shares it mostly at schools. My sister does not like to speak to adult groups.
Okay.
She only goes into some of the schools, and she has not spoken quite so extensively, you know, because somehow the Lord has opened so many doors. Because if someone would have predicted that one day, Anneke, you'll speak to 3 groups, let alone over 2,000,
Oh,
I would have never believed it, and
Yeah.
I would not have had the confidence.
that's the Lord through you.
It's so amazing.
That's
it's
great.
truly
And that
amazing.
you yield to
Wow.
it. Because some people might just say no, you know,
Yes,
and not
yeah.
yield to the Spirit. So that's a good sign.
But I actually have a fear of speaking in public.
Yeah.
But what I have, when I share that with the groups I speak with, I also say, if my parents were willing to look matters of life and death into the eye, I can stand in front of you,
Yes.
even if it means trembling.
And with their children and
Trembling
everything,
in
putting
at
everything on
times.
the line. Yeah. Wow, that's
Wow.
just amazing. Was there any other neighbors that you knew of that had Jews hidden
Not
in
in our streets.
Not on your area? There?
And I don't think in other
Yeah.
streets that I knew of, but both my father's brothers did the same thing. But the one brother, his wife would not have agreed that there could be Jewish people in his home, but he was very active with the underground, but on a very high level. He was dealing directly with and Germany and England, but there were rumors that he was maybe choosing a little bit the wrong side. And when my father heard about that, he said, I heard him, before I even let him into the house, he said, I understand that you're maybe dealing with the wrong side. And he said it might appear that I'm dealing with the wrong side, but we're gaining information.
Oh.
But he was also honored. And
Yeah,
and if
like a
you-
double agent. Sometimes they
little
do that.
bit,
To,
yes, yes.
Wow.
And then my uncle, he actually had Jewish children in the house, a little boy,
Yeah.
brother and sister, and the little girl received my ID papers. She became
You.
Anneke.
Oh.
Really?
Yes, she was born on the 3rd of September 38. And here's this Jewish girl with black hair, and she has a Frisian name, and we're all blonde, you know. It
Wow.
was but that was pretty amazing that
Wow.
they used my ID papers for her.
That is amazing.
Wow.
But,
That's awesome. So have you heard from them, you know, the other Jewish people?
you know, after that many years living with people who are willing to risk their life, you can't just
dump them, yeah.
say thank you
Yeah.
and walk away and not. We were always in touch with
That's
them, but
wonderful.
especially close with the mom, the dad, and the 2 children. It was like they became more than family.
The one that had your papers, did she go back to her own name later, or
Oh yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Immediately, as soon as the war was
they
over.
live in Israel also? Or you
No,
don't know?
I don't know what happened to
That's
them. To be
exciting.
honest,
Yeah.
yes, I don't.
Wow,
But
that's
it's,
a story. You should write a book.
My husband has written the book.
Oh,
Actually,
it's-
it's not out. I have the manuscript at home.
Oh.
But the Lord willing, I hope that maybe this year I can find and an editor and a publisher
Yeah.
to help me to.
Okay.
how
Yeah,
did
we
you-
can talk to Apostle Bill Hodge because you
Okay.
know he just had his book released.
That's true. Maybe
Yes.
that is another. That's lovely. Thank you for thinking of that. I
How did
appreciate
your
it.
mom and dad meet?
Oh, it's really. Thank you for asking because you must have a little bit read my mind because I thought I must share because my older sister was actually my half sister, but it was only on paper. We were true sisters.
Oh.
There was never a difference, that we felt. She's from a different mom, but her mother actually had died in childbirth,
Oh.
and my father first the baby died, and it was a baby boy, and then the day, like 2 weeks after she had given birth, her mom, and the day that she was supposed to come home, there was a blood clot that went to her brain. And I think like maybe at the age of like 28, he became a widower with a child, losing his wife and the baby.
Wow.
It was very devastating, but the church and my dad and my mom were going to, my mom and her family, they would always sit upstairs, and maybe my father and his first wife also, and she would sometimes point at my mom and say, that looks like a very nice girl. And my father knew my mom's brothers from catechism, so like a year after maybe his wife had passed away, he started to visit the farm where my mom was living on, and then they ended up
started
getting married. But the amazing thing is, I'm so glad that you actually, because I very likely would have mentioned, but you were able to, be in tune with me very much. That's beautiful. If my sister would not have lost her mother, the 8 people would not have been saved.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
Because she was a very beautiful person, but let's say they would have been hiding a gun underneath the floorboard, and a soldier would have come to the house. It would have been written all over her face, we are doing something illegal. So let alone a Jewish person, let alone 8 Jewish people, it would not have
And you know
happened.
that scripture, all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. So they're in heaven. You'll see them later, and I just know God is real. He's not pretend. There is a place we're gonna all meet up,
Yes.
right?
But it was just so
That's great.
incredible that here, how the Lord put the 2 of them together, and that they both had the courage, and that the Lord
That
gave them the
took a lot.
strength, to actually open their home. And my mom has said that had they known it was going to be like 3 years, my mom said she would have never done it. But by only taking one day at a time, my mom would say, you never thought about yesterday, you never thought about tomorrow, you only would concentrate on
Right now.
today.
Wow.
That's
That's
all
good
they
And that's
advice.
even,
That's
what,
all
that is
good.
the Lord's word that says, Lord, give me this day my
Yes.
daily bread.
Yes.
And
That's right.
so he will have us to focus on this day, not like you said, tomorrow, or don't be worried about yesterday because yesterday is gone, but this day, Lord, give me this day my daily bread.
By doing so, they managed to go through 3 years. But isn't that
That's
beautiful?
such a long time. It sounds
Yeah.
like 3 years. Nowadays the time seems like it's speeded up and it's flying by.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember just a summer vacation seemed like eternity. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yes, yes.
just seemed like, that's a long time.
Yeah, it is, especially, I keep going back to total strangers, because, we still have problems with opening our door to even our own relatives. We let them stay the night or maybe a week, or when they come in, we give them a deadline when they got to go. You know what I'm saying? So I just have to be honest with you, you
No,
know.
it's the
But
truth.
but yet God's grace and mercy put it in your parents' heart to allow 8 strangers.
Yes, yes.
You know, even the Bible tells us, you know, about opening up our door and let a person stay the night, you know, things like that.
Yes,
But
yes, yes.
3 years, you know, we be in the corner like, okay, Lord, what day?
Yes.
You know, because look, sister such and such,
Yes, yes.
you know, I done had it with her, you know, her and her kids, and they ate up all my, you know, I'm just telling the truth and
You
being
are,
honest.
you are.
But God, and yet, you know, that He would send supernatural provisions, not only for your mother's siblings, you know, the 3
children,
kids,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
but 8 others for 3 years.
Not all 8 were there the 3 years, but still.
Yes, yes,
it
but
doesn't
without
matter.
the whole 3 years, 8 people
Yes.
Your
come
lives
there.
were still on the line every
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
Every minute.
You could have had them 1 week, and if you were
Yeah.
caught, they would
What
have-
about your mom and dad? Was your mom a soft-spoken, good wife? It sounds like she had to be. I mean, just they didn't get in, you know, picking at each other.
No, I think they, if that had, first of all, they were exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, the tension from my dad being with the underground. Every morning when my mother saw my father leave for the underground, she didn't know if at the end of the day she would have a husband dead or alive. And, you know, to think that my
That's
mom
just
was home with 8 extra people. And not only that, my mom, once a week, she would actually go on a bicycle to look for food.
Oh, wow.
She did that, but the bicycle did not have a rubber tire because there was no longer rubber to make tires with that could be
Just a
imported.
frame?
So
I mean,
what
just
is she
the-
on the
There was a
rail?
wooden rim around it.
Wow.
But since my mom lived on a farm, had lived on a farm quite close to our city, she actually would go to her friends and ask for, you know,
Food
if they
to
would
feed
give
the
her-
strangers and stuff?
they never knew that.
Right, but
there
I'm
was
just
anyone-
saying, but
Yes.
your mom knew it was for the strangers.
But yeah, but we needed it also maybe all together, you know, all 13 of us in a way, because
Wow.
what the Germans allotted for 1 week, this much bread was for a whole week. That's all the Germans
Oh
allowed.
my God!
That's
for,
what all they allotted
for your
for.
mom and dad and your
for
3 kids. I mean, the
Each
3
one,
kids,
each one of us
each
just
got just that much
that
for
much
the whole
for a
week.
whole week. That's
So what was the portion amount that the people had that you would share with
the
share with
same-
the people?
the same. The same. They would, since there were the rationing coupons, they would have that same amount. But then maybe sometimes my mom came home with a loaf of bread, and my dad would actually cut it in very thin, 13 thin slices. And I heard later on from the Jewish people that they felt like my father had like a measure right into the knife, because it was always the bun was as thin as the next one, because my father did not want one of the Jewish people to say, so and so received a bigger slice than I did.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Isn't that
God
sweet?
guided that.
Yes,
that
that
sweet?
is. That's
Isn't that
awesome.
It is so special.
But people have asked if they ever fought, because here you throw 8 people together like that. You know, even in your own family you have fights, let alone under that tension that you know every day could be your last one. So when I speak, people have, you know, they like to ask sometimes questions at the end, and they said, did anyone ever fight? And yes, it happened one time.
Yeah, but
My mom came to my dad. She said, "You have to come because they're fighting. They were raising their voices." So my father actually, you know, he must have sent us outside or up in the attic, where we would always be when my mom was feeding the Jewish people. She would put us up into the attic and lock the lid and move the stairs so we could not surprise anyone. And my father opened the door, you know, they had to unlock it, he knocked. He said, "There's only one person who can raise his voice in this house, and that's me. The next time you raise your voices like this, I throw all of you out. I cannot risk my wife and my 3 children's lives."
you know what they say?
It never happened
It was
again.
a good. Oh,
They
wow.
needed to know that somebody was
Right.
the
Yep.
boss. Yeah.
Did you ever celebrate Christmas in your house?
We did.
I'd like
yes.
to know how that went.
Yes, thank you for asking. And I still want to share also about the Germans searching my house, because those are the miracles that truly
That's
happened.
what we want to do too.
But in 1944, my parents had actually celebrated Christmas with us. And what my mom would always do, she would go upstairs, take us upstairs to go to sleep. And the three of us, we actually slept on a mattress on the floor, and our bedroom door was always locked at all times, so we could not surprise anyone. My dad used to say after the war was over that we also became like prisoners in our own house. But and then what my mom would do when we were in bed, then she would say really loudly as she was coming downstairs, they could hear that, the Jewish people, good night, dear children, sleep well. And for them it was the sign that then they could unlock the door and they would come into the much larger front room where they had more space.
Wow.
So that was yes, that was really very lovely, for them to have a little extra room. And
Awful in that time.
but that Christmas, my father actually knocked on their door, and he said, just for one evening, my wife Hal and I, we would like to spend some time together. And then, as my father closed the door, 8 pairs of eyes looked at each other. And for the very, very first time, they felt like they were too much. But then, instead of hearing quiet, they heard like plates making clattering noises and footsteps going back and forth. And suddenly, my mom, they heard a knock on the door. It was my mom telling them, please come into the other room. And my father had been able to create a Hanukkah and this burning candles. He had found up in the attic still some little candles that they could use for that. And there's the wreath next to that, like a sign of brotherhood.
Yes.
Wow.
And there was a white tablecloth on the table.
Oh.
And then as they walked in, my father was playing the organ and he was singing the Hatikvah.
Wow.
He was playing on the organ the song, the Hatikvah, the song of hope.
I don't know it.
The song of
Can
hope.
you sing it for me? No.
I wish I could, I'm sorry.
No.
But it's very beautiful.
Oh, that's
And then when they all sat down, with tears in their eyes, actually.
And that he went through that trouble, to get all that together for them was a blessing for them. I'm sure.
Wow.
I'm sure.
Yes. But the oldest of the group, he actually got up and he said, why do the two of you do this for us? And he was crying too hard to continue. And when he sat down, Alice told me this story when I lived in Israel. And she said, Anneke, as long as I will live, I will never forget that evening.
Wow,
Isn't that
that's
beautiful?
exciting.
Wow.
so
So
good.
how, at the time, Anneke,
Yes.
how old was the oldest and how young was the youngest of the 8?
Okay, probably the oldest might have been by that time like 67, and the youngest would have been 17
Okay.
or 16
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. So during that time, the one that's 17 or 16 didn't have any schooling or anything like that because of what was going on.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's true.
Now, what about those miracle testimonies? I've got to
Yes.
hear that.
Yes, it's so amazing how the Lord totally. One of the 8, it was Alice's mother,
Oh, excuse me.
Alice and Bob's mother. Who, thank you very much. Thank you. She, even though she was not a religious Jew, she said God put a cross on the roof of this house, and said this house cannot be touched. And I know there was a cross on that roof.
And you know that she's saved. I mean, you know what I mean. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
Wow.
Yes, but one of the first miracles was actually 5 houses from my house. There was a Nazi,
Wow.
Dutch Nazi, but God totally prearranged that. We know because he was a good Nazi. When he realized what the Germans were doing, he no longer wanted to be part of the party, but he knew too much. They would kill him. So he just decided that whatever knowledge he could gain from being a member, he would try to help the Dutch. And every time when he heard they're going to search the houses, and that was called a razzia, he would say to his next door neighbor, and that was a Catholic family with like 7 children, 2 daughters and 5 sons, today your sons have to leave because tomorrow they will come and search the houses. And that neighbor told his next door neighbor. That news would travel all through the street, but it always came on time to my parents' ears. So each time when the Germans, the first time only one soldier entered the house, came to search the homes, already the Jewish people were sitting in the hiding place. But can you imagine a good Nazi living 5 houses down?
Wow.
That is amazing.
That is
This
amazing.
That was handpicked from the Lord. You know it was.
We know that. We
The
know
steps of a
that.
good man are ordered by the Lord, and He ordered those steps.
Just
Everything
talking
in
about
place.
it, I have goosebumps.
Yes. Wow.
But then the third time, actually 3 German soldiers came, and the one soldier, what he did, he went right through the house, into the kitchen, out the back door, so no one could escape from the back door. The second soldier was the one who actually decided that he was going to be the one walking in the hallway so no one could escape from the front door. And the third, he was going to do the searching in the house. So he came to my mom and he asked my mother, "Where is your husband?" And my mom did not speak German. But those 2 words are the same in German as in Dutch. And she just raised her shoulder that she had no idea. But out of the 3 times, the only time that my father was in the hiding place was actually the 3rd time. So, you know, my mother knew that my father was sitting in the hiding place, but she just pretended that she had no
Same
idea
thing,
where he
yeah.
was. So,
Wow, that was the Lord. I mean,
but
you know.
yes. But then also, what my mom decided to do, she was pretending like she was doing her house cleaning, and she had like a chair on top of the table and was like polishing it, and even had put like a little scarf to keep her hair clean. She was singing psalms.
Wow.
During that time, she told my older sister Romy, she said, "I want you to go to the organ and I'd like you to start playing the organ." She asked me, she turned to me and she said, "Anneke, I'd like you to go outside because maybe and talk to the soldier because maybe he has a little girl just like you and maybe he misses her."
Give you favor.
So I don't remember very much of the years of when the Jewish people were there, but I remember that day very, very clearly because he was kind of
And it's
short.
good they shared all that with you. You know, instead of trying to protect you from all those stories. That's wonderful.
So she asked me, yes, and so she asked me to, to just talk to him, and I remember he was like quite short, a little bit on the sturdy side, and had like a brush cut haircut. But I even happened to notice that he had this very heavy link silver bracelet on his wrist. But he was talking to me in German and I talked to him in Dutch and we could not understand each other. But I remember the most of that encounter was that he was very kind to me. That stands out.
He was trying to communicate. You got that communication.
Yes, that he was kind to me. But what became very scary inside the house was that the soldier who was inside, and I wish I could show it I can't show it, but I'll tell you what it was like. He was like walking back and forth, and every time that his foot hit the floorboard, he would use the butt part of his gun and hit the floor. And it was only that floorboard, with the mat, the vinyl over it and the mat,
Could have made a hole and discovered down
separating them from the soldier, but they could like feel it because their heads, was just a crawl space. It was just about from where my hand is to the floor, so they had to sit in there, and their heads almost reached, the floorboard. But what they were frightened of was that maybe where there was no one sitting, because there was an area that was not used for the hiding place, as the hiding place, that maybe there was going to be a different sound, and they were very scared of that. But what they did not know was that there was ammunition there from the underground, falsified papers, guns. And then at one point all the Dutch had been told you have to bring your radio and any items that are made out of copper to a certain spot in the city. And my father went to all the neighbors and he said, "Come to my house and I will hide it for you." So quite a few of the neighbors had brought their radios, their items
And
made
they were
out
all
of
under
copper.
there?
That
Down
was
there?
also underneath. So looking back, we're saying, you know, maybe the fact that it was not an empty space that saved our life as well.
Yes. Oh,
Isn't that
man.
amazing?
Wow, that's
Every little
awesome.
detail God took care of.
Yeah.
Every
So
detail.
amazing.
That's for sure.
Wow.
But
Wow,
yes.
because of time, Anneke, if you could look
Yes.
into the camera, whatever the Lord put on your heart to pray for
Yes.
someone,
Yes.
you know,
Or
whatever it
anything.
is, yeah. And that's
so
your
much.
camera you'll be
Okay,
looking into.
thank you.
Mhm.
My prayer for each one of you is that may you discover the peace that passes all understanding. May the Lord touch your heart the way He touched ours during those difficult times. And may you also experience His protection and His love for you. May the Lord bless you abundantly. I thank you, Lord, that
We all agree.
this wonderful evening that we can be together.
Thank you, Lord.
May the Holy Spirit touch you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we
Amen.
magnify
Thank
the
you.
Lord.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, Father.
We all
you.
agree. Yes, Lord.
Yes.
Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you so much, Anneke, for coming to share that. That is truly an honor, you know, that you will take out the time and share, you know, what the Lord has been doing and has done with your family and what He's doing with you, and using that testimony to share. And you had spoken over 2,000 times since then. You know, I just count it an honor and a privilege that you would take out the time to share, you know, such precious testimony of the Lord.
And you're glorifying the Lord, and you're magnifying the Lord, and you're sharing with other people the power of the Lord. And you know, you can trust Him when you're most afraid.
Yes, you're
most
absolutely
afraid.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is
Even
wonderful.
when you don't see a way, He always makes a way.
Yes.
And that your
Yes,
parents
yes.
yielded to that Holy Spirit.
Yes.
What
they
a
did.
testimony.
Yes,
Yeah, I know you're so
yes,
proud of your
yes.
mom and dad and your whole family.
And
That's
I'm quite
wonderful.
sure
Thank you.
your
Yes,
information will be on the screen. If someone would like to have you come and share at a church or congregation,
would
you
be
know,
very
or
special.
family event, you
Yes,
know,
yes,
to
thank
come
you.
share,
How beautiful.
And
or
when-
school, you know, because
Yes,
you know, people at school are open to such stories as well. Yes.
I was going to say, when you get done with your book and your husband gets it published, you could come back on the show,
Oh, how
and then
kind.
it'll go all
Yes.
over the world because
How
it's on YouTube.
kind.
So
that is so
that'd
kind.
be really good.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you so
This
much.
was. I feel so humbled that you invited me.
Yes.
I'm
You know,
thankful.
from
She
the-
always finds good guests.
From
Why?
the
It's the
time,
Lord.
yes,
It's the Lord. You're right.
yes,
It's the
yes.
Lord.
But from the time I came to the Christian bookstore, it was like less than 10 days that you actually invited me to be here.
To God be the glory.
That was just
Yes,
so from the
so
Lord.
of the Lord. Yes,
I'm
yes.
thankful too. It's
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
and God bless you.
Thank you.
Spirit of the sovereign Lord, come and make your presence known